And welcome back to my channel. Unless you're new here, and then just welcome. My name is Rusty. How are you doing? And this is my channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal. And we're moving on this little fall break Thanksgiving block. So it should all come out next week or something. With The Fan. I love this movie so much. I love this movie like chocolate and absinthe poured over honey and sugar. That's how much I love this movie. Of course, I'd never drink absinthe anymore. I used to drink that a lot when I was younger. It's probably what's wrong with me. Anyway, The Fan was released in 1981. The Fan was directed by Ed Bianchi. It was written by Bob Randall and Priscilla Chapman, and it stars Lauren Bacall in her foray into horror, and James Garner and Michael Biehn. He was just a little baby in this movie. You know, this is before Terminator, and it's before Aliens. This is one of his first movies, and it's got also Maureen Stapleton, and, interesting little trivia, there is a cameo in the dance studio of the guy that turned into a werewolf. Not, they both turned into a werewolf. No, they didn't. American Werewolf in London. Not the guy that gets bit and turns into a werewolf, but his friend that gets all chewed up and he starts to leave him and then runs back and he's all ripped to shreds and then follows him around like a ghost. Him. He has a cameo in this movie. He too is just a wee little lad. He's a wee baby. But, yeah. So, The Fan, which was released a year before The Seduction, which is I don't know. Which one would I give the prize to? Now, The Seduction with Morgan Fairchild and Andrew Stevens is at least based on a real incident. An LA news reporter who was being stalked. But basically, The Fan and The Seduction were the two first movies to tackle that subject. It's right when the public really started becoming aware of how fucking crazy psycho fans can be. And The Fan came out, this one came out first in 1981, and The Seduction followed in 1982. And, yeah, so Michael Biehn plays a guy called Douglas Breen. Now, Douglas Breen is just like awesomely beautiful. He could have anyone he wants. But he has become obsessed with Sally Ross. Now, Sally Ross is played by Lauren Bacall, who is still stunningly beautiful in this movie. And I think she was 56 or 57 when she did this movie. And, oh, that's her. And then Michael Biehn and Maureen Stapleton. Yeah, but she's still very stunning in this movie. And she plays a star of stage and screen who he has become very unhealthily attracted to. And so he's writing her these letters. And, you know, we get a little backstory about him, but not much. We get a lot more backstory about her. She was married to James Garner's character, and they're divorced now. And so she's keeping her career alive. She's just coming off of Broadway, a very, very successful Broadway play. And you're seeing Douglas write her these letters. And at first they sound kind of normal, you know, how I'm your greatest fan and I'm not like the others. I really care for you and all this kind of shit. And you're like, yeah. Pat Benatar wrote a song about that. It's on don't you just love the way I throw all this trivia in here? Rock trivia. Pat Benatar wrote a song about it. Fans. And on the Get Nervous album. And it reminds me of this movie. But, so as we're watching him write this stuff, these letters get increasingly, like a psycho would, they get increasingly more controlling, you know, and he then becomes like, starts stalking her. And meanwhile, we're seeing her backstory where she's dealing with her ex who's fixing to marry someone else. She starts dating this much younger guy who's about his age, about Douglas's age. And then, of course, Maureen Stapleton plays her secretary, who she's the one who actually, like any celebrity, you have people in the way between you and fans. And she's the one that receives all of the letters, writes back, sends photos, things like that. So, of course, Sally Ross isn't really seeing this develop. And as it gets worse, he stops signing his last name. He's just like, Douglas, you know, we're going to get married and all this. And you really start to see that he's losing it. Well, he had already lost it. He was losing it from the beginning. But you really know the movie really steps up a notch when he writes, you know, your secretary sent me the wrong picture. I've already got it. And your secretary is not speaking to me correctly and not giving me the respect and all. And I'm like, see, yeah, we're going down that road, you know, and one of the little backstories we see of him is his sister comes knocking on his door. And she is the actress who played the mother of the little boy in Cujo. Not Dee Wallace. I'm talking about the other boy, the black-headed boy, the owner of the dog. And then remember her and him, she won a lottery or something? What did she do? Don't you love the way I just go all over the place? She got money and her and him left. And Cujo had gotten bit by the rabid bat and left alone there with the father. The father was the abusive shit. Well, anyway, that woman, the mother, she plays his sister. Yes, I'm pointing to his picture on the screen. So, she knocks on the door and is like, where have you been? The family's worried about you. And he's like, how dare you come and interrupt me? I'm having dinner with a very famous actress. And she's like, really? Who? He's like, none of your business. Just go away and leave me alone. And so he pushes her out. So she's got that little cameo role. Horror fans are like this. We see everybody and know where they're from. So it's kind of cool. But anyway, so we see that he's nuts because, when he closes the door, he goes and sits down to this lovely dinner in front of nobody. And, there's fucking nobody sitting there. And yet he's talking to her like, sorry about the interruption, Sally. And you're like, okay. All right. That's all right. Shit's going to get ugly. I know it. So now that he's been stalking, he sends her, I guess it was the secretary's final straw because he sends her, there's a scene where he's taking a shower and of course the narration is the letter and, it's raunchy, right? I can't wait for us to be together so I can make love to you. And I've certainly got the equipment to make you happy and stuff. And I'm like, really? Well, interestingly enough, this is a perfect time for a shower shot, a butt shot, and you're not giving me one. So that's why you got a little points knocked off there. But okay. So the secretary gets a hold of this letter, right? And she's like, she tells Sally, she's like, Jesus Christ, this guy says this really raunchy letter. And she didn't appreciate it, and Sally, she's a celebrity like any other celebrity. So the celebrity's just like, yeah, whatever. Anyway, I got to go do this. So she's not paying attention. That's how these celebrities get into this kind of trouble. They don't pay attention. They leave and the secretary is not the object. It's the star that's the object. And yet the star is the one who's like, take care of that for me. Well, you're the one they're after. You think you would take a little bit more attention. But of course, right now, they're not scared because all he did was just send her a raunchy love note. So, but still, the secretary was just like, I've had enough. So she writes him, and it's like, I will not stand for that kind of language, and I will no longer be giving her any of your letters, so don't write no more. Bad decision. Bad decision. Right? Bad decision. You don't do that. You don't do that to a psycho. So, he then is like very furious, and he starts really stalking the secretary because, you're the one who did this. I got sidetracked. Remember what I told you a while ago? I told you something a while ago about, okay, there it is. I had to go into my music folder and look up that goddamn song. It was called Out of Touch by Pat Benatar. That's the song about an obsessed fan, which reminds me a lot of this movie, actually, because that song is nuts, and it's about a nutcase. So he's like chasing her or stalking her, and he manages to get her routine down, and that's when the film turns bloody. Because, and if you know Maureen Stapleton, you don't expect her to be the victim of a slasher, right? But he catches her in the tube station, and, nobody's around, and he slashes her all up with a razor blade. Now, he, of course, goes home and, whatever weirdos do, whacked off to it or something. But he goes home and writes a letter, like, I'm sorry I had to take her out of the way because she was in between us, and that's just not acceptable. She was harming our relationship. Now, what he didn't know was that she lived. She wasn't dead. But then again, it's all too late, right? Because nobody paid attention when they should have been paying attention. And so all she knows is that it's a guy named Douglas. He used to sign his last name, but, we get the mail, we throw it away, we answer it, we throw it away, and he don't sign it no more. So she just has no way of remembering from the thousands of fans what his last name is. So the cops are like really trying to protect her now. Sally is all upset, and she is like working hard to get ready for this new musical that she is fixing to do. So she's distracted by all that. Now her secretary gets slashed the fuck up. And for some reason, I don't know about you, but for some reason, getting slashed up by a straight razor is more horrific to me than getting slashed up by a knife. I don't know why that is. But the kind of, a straight razor that you see old barber shop, doing on that, and cowboy movies, they have that leather thing and they're doing that on it. That, one of those folding, so he slashed that bitch all to hell. You know what I'm saying? So, for some reason, getting slashed up by a straight razor just is more horrific to me than getting slashed up by a knife. I'm not really sure why that is, but it does bother me more. And that's his weapon of choice, is a straight razor. So, now that he slashed her all up, he's stepped up everything. She now knows that something is going on, but she's not quite, because at first they're like, oh, poor, she got mugged. Like, who would want to, isn't the city terrible, that she got mugged? But she gets that letter. She's at home after coming home from the hospital, after seeing her secretary. She's at home, and the secretary had told her, you have to pay the bills. I'm not there. You have to read the mail. Well, that letter from Douglas, informing her about his act of love that he had committed, that he had murdered the secretary and done it all for her and for their relationship. Oh my God, right? So she freaks the fuck out. And she tells the detective, and now they got 24-hour security on her and stuff like that. Well, he's like watching, and he chooses his next target, which is her boyfriend, this new young guy, because she's like 57 and the guy she's dating is like 22. You know what I mean? He's like 23, 24, something like that. So that's all right. You go for it, baby. If you can get it, take it. That's my motto. If you're 62 and a 19-year-old finds you attractive and wants to date you, call yourself Cher and go for it. That's all I got to say. But, so, he takes his eye on him now. And that is a particularly nasty scene as well. And goddamn, he's got to use that straight razor, right? He follows him to the YMCA. And the village people are not there. But he follows him to the YMCA, slides into the pool, and he does this with like 50 dudes around, right? Because it's the YMCA. So like, there's people in the pool and walking around. And he slides into the pool all slick. And while her boyfriend is like swimming across the pool, he comes up under him and gets him from like the right down the gut, just like opens him up from underneath the water. I'm like, what the fuck would that feel like? First of all, you'd be very shocked. I'm sure. Like, woo, like what? How did a shark get in the fucking pool at the YMCA? You know what I'm saying? But yeah, he opened him up. Once again, though, he don't finish the job. He don't get caught. He slips right back out. And David, that was the boy's name. So David actually is alive, but he's in critical condition, but he will recover and he will be all right. Of course, he's not going to look so good without a shirt on, I would imagine, from now on. But yeah, so now, of course, Sally is batshit. I would be batshit. Because this phantom, right, seems to be hitting everybody closest to her. And, you know, there's this scene where she's talking to the detective, and she even looks at, you know, he's like, well, I don't really want to talk about this. And she goes, you can talk about this. I'm not stupid. I've lived my whole life in Hollywood and the Broadway and stuff like that. And he's after me now. He took out my secretary. He took out my boyfriend. Now there's nobody left. He's coming after me. I know that, you know. So they try to keep a watch on her, but it scares her so bad. It scares her so bad that she actually drugs the cop, the lady cop that's staying with her at her house. She drugs her and knocks her out and takes off to some secluded beach house, right? Scared to death. Nobody knows where she's at. Well, when that's announced on the news, Douglas is really upset, right? Because there ain't no way he's going to find her now. So he's got to get her back to town. This evil, devious little shit comes up with a plan. He gets all prettied up, and he goes to a bar, a gay bar. And he's like looking, but it ain't for a date. He's trying to find someone that is similar to himself, right? And he gives him the eye, this poor innocent kid. He gives him the eye, and they go up to the roof where he promptly cuts his throat from ear to ear. Terrible, ugly scene. Cuts his throat, pours gasoline all over him, sets him on fire, and then leaves a suicide note on the stairwell going down from it. I mean, it's the middle of the city. That fire ain't going to go too far. But he puts like a suicide note, and he makes it out like that was him, and that he had committed suicide because he couldn't be with Sally. Well, it works, right? Because the cops think that it's over. Sally thinks that it's over. Everybody thinks deed is done. Signed, sealed, and delivered. She comes back to town. She makes it to her premiere. And who's sitting in the audience? That crazy motherfucker. That's who's sitting in the audience. So he's like tears in his eyes because her show is so beautiful and stuff like that. And he's now horribly maimed two people, and he has now murdered this guy. And I forgot a murder because I knew there was. He's maimed too, and he's straight up horribly slasher Michael Jason fashion killed that dude from the bar. But he also went to her apartment. This happened a little while back. I forgot about it. He also went to her apartment. So it was actually his first real kill. He thought he thought it was his third kill because he didn't know the other two were still alive. But he gets in there, and her maid, he Jasons her ass. I mean, that's an ugly scene too. He like cuts her all up with this straight razor and leaves her dead on the floor. That was actually his first kill. The boy from the bar is his second kill. And he thought this was his fourth kill. So he was a serial killer in his own mind, but he only had two successful ones. So he's sitting in the audience. They have the little after party. Everybody leaves. She's like cleaning up, and there's nobody left but the stage manager and her. Well, he gets victim number 5 because he guts the stage manager and leaves them. Like I said, the intensity of this movie went from dumbassness to stalking to thought he murdered the secretary, thought he murdered her boyfriend, really murdered the maid, really killed a total stranger, innocent boy, murdered this innocent maid. So it's went full force, you know. So he kills the stage manager who was waiting for Sally to get through so they could leave and lock up. And then he goes in there and you have the big showdown. And it is absolutely mesmerizing. Lauren Bacall is flawless, and he is flawless. And in this, they fight. He beats her with a horse crop. You know, like Madonna uses in the Confessions tour. I've got the DVD. That's the only thing that could come to my mind. Is Madonna with that horse crop. It's that long thing that whatever. I'm sure you can figure it out. But he beats her with that. He like slaps her around. They have this really interesting dialogue, and I think she gets the idea. You know, he's got the straight razor out and all. And she gets the idea to play on it, you know. And so she turns into a bitch and is like, you're a weakling, you're a coward, I could never be with you and stuff like that. And that throws him off balance enough for her to then soften up, which softened him up and made him literally like put his head on her shoulder and like, please love me and stuff like that, which instead she's reached up and took his hand, and then she uses his hand to stick that straight razor right through his throat. And he ends up falling back in a chair. And it's a really iconic scene because the camera pans back and he's just sitting there in the second row like he's watching a thing, and his eyes are open, his mouth is open, and he's dead because he's bled out. And then it pans back until you see Sally up against the stage looking at him, and it's just horrible. And then she runs out and runs past him, and that's the fan. So it's amazing to see a classic era actress like Lauren Bacall. I mean, I know other classic era actresses have done it, like Joan Crawford did a lot of horror movies, Bette Davis did horror movies, but it's just not really, you know, a lot of people don't know, but Marilyn Monroe did a horror movie too called Don't Bother to Knock, where she played a psycho girl. And that's a really good movie if you've never heard of it. But, there are some of these classic actresses and actors who went on in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Like this is 81. So while some of them were still alive, you had some of them that did do some horror. But it's just not something you expect Lauren Bacall to do, because this is a very raunchy, very racy, very bloody, very tense. So not only did she do a horror movie, but she did we're not talking Escape to Witch Mountain. We're talking a full-on bloody slasher, because it is a slasher. Because the kills were very slasher. He was using a straight razor, for God's sakes. But yeah, and then, that cast, Maureen Stapleton, James Garner, Lauren Bacall in a bloody horror movie. That's pretty neat. It's pretty neat. So it's very good. I'm very glad to have it. That's the story of The Fan. If you've ever seen it, let me know. If you haven't, you really should, just to get to see Lauren Bacall in a horror movie and still looking absolutely stunning. And of course, that voice. She sings a lot in this movie too, because she's, that play she was in was a musical, and she's got one of them voices that's like, I don't think Lauren Bacall can, how do you sing with a voice like that? Because, she had that Marlene Dietrich kind of voice, or is it Greta Garbo, whatever it is. That raspy voice of Lauren Bacall. But actually, her songs are very cool in this movie. So she can actually sing. But, yeah. Lauren Bacall, Michael Biehn, when he was a baby. James Garner, Maureen Stapleton. Phenomenal movie. I gave it a 9.4 out of 10. And I think you know why. Because I did mention it. I did mention that there was a part in the movie in which you had an opportunity to do something that you did not do. Especially since he was talking about it. And that's The Fan. Thank you very much for checking it out. If you've ever heard of this movie or seen it, let me know. If you haven't, see if you can find it. See if you can give it a shot. It's definitely worth having in your collection. It is a classic. It is wonderful. And just look at who's in it. Michael Biehn and Lauren Bacall. I mean, it's great. So I will see you. Thank you very much for your time. And I appreciate it. You spending the time to listen to me waffle on about whatever movie I'm talking about. And I will see you in the next one. Love you, miss you. Bye-bye. Always remember and never forget, you're a very, very special person, no matter what anybody tells you. Just like me. Bye-bye.